We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. It is Monday, February 7th, 6 a.m. This is Abe, your host. Just got off work. It's a pretty chill night. Was going to go in tomorrow for some overtime, but we're all caught up at work, so never mind on that. Make a little extra money after getting my car fixed, which I dropped about $1,450 on it. That and was going to try to make a little extra money for Valentine's Day, but don't look like that's going to happen. Today we are covering some Hunter S. Thompson. Well, one, because I find it entertaining. Two, because I like his writing style. Yes, I know he is a controversial figure. A lot of people have tied him in with the whole, John Bonacci or whatever, the Franklin cover-up scandal. That, and I know he's been to Bohemian Grove, but look at it this way, it's a good way to get into the mind of the enemy if you want to look at it from a conspiratorial point of view. Also, when reading his stuff, he writes in a gonzo journalism style. I've had people try to debate me in the comments. I'm not going to do it. Sometimes he's trolling. Sometimes he's telling the truth. Sometimes he's lying. It's kind of hard to tell when you're reading Hunter S. Thompson whether it's true or false, whether it's real or not. You just need to use your discernment. But yeah, let's get on with the show. Buckle in and buy the ticket, take the ride. It's to Mona for making this outburst possible. And this is Screwjack. Dear Maurice, hello. Have a nice day. Yes, mahalo. Stand back. I have finally returned from the wilderness, where I was chased and tormented by huge radioactive bobcats for almost 22 weeks. When I finally escaped, they put me in a decompression chamber with some people I couldn't recognize. So I went all to pieces, and now I can't remember anything or anybody or even who I was. All that time, which was exactly since Groundhog Day, when it started. Anyway, that's why I fell behind in my correspondence for a while. I could not be reached except by the animals, and they hated me. I never knew why. There was no explanation for it. So what? Who needs reasons for a thing like that? Escape is all that matters, except for the horrible scars. But that is a different question. Today we must deal with the book, which requires my total attention now. A brainless whore would not say this, Maurice. The truth is not in them. But I am not a brainless whore. And if I was, I don't remember it. Who cares? Shit happens. On some days, I don't miss my memory at all. Most days, in fact. It is like knowing that you were a jackbastard in your previous life. Then somebody tells you to be careful not to scream in your sleep anymore. You start to feel afraid. But not me, Maurice. As for the order, I think Screwjack should be the last and Mescalito the first. So the dramatic tension and also the true chronological weirdness can build like Bolero to a faster and wilder climax that will drag the reader relentlessly up a hill and then drop him off a cliff. That is the desired effect. And if we start with Screwjack, it won't happen. The book will peter out. Okay, that's about it for now. We can wrap this thing up very quickly, I think. Indeed. And so much for all that. I have to go out into the yard and murder a skunk. And if I fail, he will murder me. Some things never change. In closing, I remind your calm and gentle friend, Hunter. Death of a Poet. In the coffin of ice I sleep naked. In the tunnel of fire I drink. F.X. Leach. It was dark when we dropped into Green Bay, and the airport was deadly calm. The whole town was in shock from the disastrous beating inflicted that day on the hometown Packers by the Kansas City Chiefs. Their confidence was broken. The magic man had failed. Mighty Casey had struck out. The girl at the Avis counter was weeping uncontrollably in her booth as I approached. My heart was filled with joy, but I couldn't get through to her. She had lost her will to live. "Take any car you want," she said. "I don't care anymore. It's over. I'm moving to Milwaukee on Monday." "Who cares?" I said. "Give me some goddamn keys." She was slow to respond, so I gave her a taste of the long knuckle, and she fell to her knees. "There's more where that came from," I told her. Then I grabbed a set of keys off a nail and hurried outside to find a car. I was eager to see Leach and celebrate our great victory. The address he had given me turned out to be a trailer court behind the stockyards. He met me at the door with red eyes and trembling hands, wearing a soiled cowhide bathrobe and carrying a half-gallon of wild turkey. "You got here just in time," he said. "I was about to slit my wrist. This is the worst day of my life." "Nonsense," I said. "We won big. I bet the same way you did. You gave me the numbers. You even predicted Kansas City would stomp the Packers." FX tensed. Then he threw back his head and uttered a high-pitched, quavering shriek. "Ah!" I seized him. "Get a grip on yourself," I snapped. "What's wrong?" "I went crazy," he said. "I got drunk and changed my bet. Then I doubled up." I felt a shudder in my spine. "What?" I said. "You bet on the Packers? What happened?" "I went to that big Packer pep rally with some guys from the shop," he said. "We were all drinking schnapps and screaming, and I lost my head. It was impossible to bet against the Packers in that atmosphere." It was true. Leach was a bad drinker and a junkie for mass hysteria. "They're going to kill me," he said. "They'll be here by midnight. I'm doomed." He uttered another low cry and reached for the wild turkey bottle, which had fallen over and spilled. "Hang on," I said. "I'll get more." On my way to the kitchen, I was jolted by the sight of a naked woman slumped awkwardly in the corner with a desperate look on her face, as if she had been shot. Her eyes were bulged, and her mouth was wide open, and she appeared to be reaching out for me. I leapt back and heard laughter behind me. My first thought was that Leach, unhinged by his gambling disaster, had finally gone over the line with his wife-beating habit and shot her in the mouth just before I knocked on the door. She appeared to be crying out for help, but there was no voice. I ran into the kitchen and looked around for a knife, thinking that if Leach had gone crazy enough to kill his wife, now he would have tried to kill me too, since I was the only witness. Suddenly he appeared in the doorway, holding the naked woman by the neck, and hurled her across the room at me. Time stood still for an instant. The woman seemed to hover in the air, coming at me in the darkness like a body in slow motion. I went into a stance with the bread knife and braced for fighting. Then the thing hit me and bounced softly down to the floor. It was a rubber blow-up doll, one of those things with 5 orifices that young stockbrokers buy in adult bookstores after the single bars are closed. "Meet Jennifer," he said. "She's my punching bag." He picked up the doll by her hair and slammed it across the room. "Ho ho!" he chuckled. "No more wife beating. I'm cured, thanks to Jennifer." He smiled sheepishly. "It's almost like a miracle these dolls saved my marriage. They're a lot smarter than you think," he nodded gravely. "Sometimes I have to beat 2 at once. But it always calms me down. You know what I mean?" Whoops, I thought. Welcome to the night train. "Oh, hell yes," I said quickly. "How do the neighbors handle it?" "No problem," he said. "They love me." Sure, I thought. I tried to imagine the horror of living in a muddy industrial lot full of tin-walled trailers and trying to protect your family against brain damage from knowing that. Every night, when you look out your kitchen to check out the neighbor's unit, there will be a man in a leather bathrobe flogging 2 naked women around the room with a quart of wild turkey, sometimes for 2 or 3 hours. It was horrible. "How's your wife?" I asked. "Is she still here?" "Oh, yes," he said quickly. "She just went out for some cigarettes. She'll be back any minute." He nodded eagerly. "Oh, yes, she's very proud of me. We've almost reconciled. She really loves these dolls." I smiled, but something about his story made me nervous. "How many do you have?" I asked him. "Don't worry," he said. "I have all we need." He reached into a nearby broom closet and pulled out another one, a half-inflated Chinese-looking woman with rings in her nipples and 2 electric cords attached to her head. "This is Ling Ling," he said. "Screams when I hit her." He whacked the doll's head and it squawked stupidly. Just then we heard car doors slamming outside the trailer, a loud knocking on the front door, and a gruff voice shouting, "Open up! Police!" Leach grabbed for a snub-nosed .44 Magnum out of a shoulder holster inside his bathrobe and fired 2 shots through the front door. "You bitch!" he screamed. "I should have killed you a long time ago." He fired 2 more shots, laughing calmly. Then he turned to face me and put the barrel of the gun in his mouth. He hesitated for a moment, staring directly into my eyes. Then he pulled the trigger and blew off the back of his head. Screwjack. Among the many documents, manuscripts, personal papers, and artifacts and artworks that miraculously survived the great firestorm that swept the Duke estate in the winter of '88 was this one. A profoundly disturbing love letter that he wrote to his wife only 16 days before his disappearance. The first few lines contain no warning of the madness and fear and lust that came more and more to plague him and dominate his life, as he felt his crimes coming back to haunt him. And that's from the editors. I was joined by the rich and famous Mr. Screwjack, who ate the last of the tuna fish and gave me one of those head jobs under the chin, and then tried to coax me outside with him. But I refused. So he shrugged and went out by himself into the cold and sunless dawn. He would rather have stayed inside with me, the 2 of us curled up on the couch together, watching Oprah Winfrey on TV. I could see it in his cold yellow eyes, a wistful kind of yearning for love that would have to wait, or perhaps could never be. His whining drove me crazy, as I carried him in my arms to the front door, and just before I hurled his wretched black ass out into the thin crust of snow that had settled on the porch since midnight, I lifted him up to my face and kissed him deeply on the lips. I forced my tongue between his fangs and rolled it around the ridges on the top of his mouth. I gripped him around his strong young shoulders and pulled him closer to me. His purring was so loud and strong that it made both of us tremble. "Ah, sweet Screwjack," I whispered, "we are doomed. Mama has gone off to real estate school, and then to El Centro, and after that maybe even to law school, We will never see her again." He stared at me, but said nothing. Then he twisted out of my grip and dropped to the floor. And then he was gone, with no noise, like some ghost from my other world. And I knew in my heart, as his dirty black shape leaped away from me across the woodpile and through that shadowy hole between the blue spruce tree and the cold silver grill of the Volvo, that I would never see him again. At least not for 6 years, and probably not then. And the next time we meet, he would weigh 200 pounds and flip me over on my stomach and fuck me from behind like a panther. Like my beast and my dolphin, my perfect dream lover, like that ghost that I must forget. And my beautiful little tattoo that will cost me $1,500 to get burned off my shoulder with a laser needle. Forgive me, Lord, for loving this beast like I do, and for wanting him so deep inside me that I will finally feel him coming on the soft red skin of my own heart, and for wanting to lay down beside him and sleep like a baby with our bodies wrapped into each other, and the same wild dream in our heads. I am guilty, Lord, but I am also a lover. And I am one of your best people, as you know, and yea, though I have walked in many strange shadows, and acted crazy from time to time, and even drooled on many high priests, I have not been an embarrassment to you. So leave me alone, goddammit, and send me Mr. Screwjack back to me. And if the others have any questions or snide comments about it, tell them to eat shit and die. Who among them is pure enough to cast the first stone, or to look on me with those roomy courtroom eyes and say that I was wrong for loving a huge black tomcat? Never mind that, Lord. I can handle it. Just keep the lawyers off my back, and the pious, and leave us alone to make babies. Raoul Duke. At the depths of my social leperism, I remember Duke's strange letter, and I am horrified to realize that I am fondling the cat. We were smoking marijuana a moment ago, maybe for 1 or 2 minutes, and now he is acting wild. He is rolling his nuts at me for real this time, on his back, in my lap, and suddenly curling up to put his fangs on me. He uttered a low kind of whimpering sound. Then he opened his mouth and grabbed the ball muscle of my right thumb with all 4 of those goddamn white fangs. I was stroking his navel at the time, and for one very high 10th of a second, I thought the crazy black bastard was going to do it. I was typing, but once the boy put his fangs on me, things changed. I stared down at him very intently from a distance of 5 or 6 inches, compounded by the factor of 1.25 by the specs. So I felt pretty close to the beast when he suddenly curled up in my lap and began sinking his teeth into me. That's how it felt. It was a very interesting sensation because I believed it was really happening. This monster was actually going to puncture me, draw blood, and change our lives forever. God damn it, I thought. You fool, I trusted you. But I was wrong. You're no better than that punk mailer fell for. And now I must cut your head off. And then the beast said, nevermore. It was a very long moment, no more than a second. And then he suddenly relaxed and rolled on his back, releasing his bite from my thumb muscle, as if it had never happened. He pushed his wiry little neck back against the palm of my left hand and gazed up at me. I closed my fingers around his neck and got a firm grip on his shoulders. He began to purr, and the pupils in his eyes closed down to blissful little black slits as he wantonly ground his sharp, ugly little hip bones down into the palm of my right hand, and one he almost bit. The phone rang. It was Pat Cattle, calling from Santa Barbara, with a whole raft of ugly political news. I can't talk now, I said. I have to deal with this animal. Call me back when you calm down. Then I hung up the phone and looked up once again at Screwjack. "You're lucky," I told him. "That was Mr. Cattle, the political man. He sends you his best regards." Then I clamped my fingers very suddenly around his neck in a vice-like grip that cut his wind off, while at the same time dragging his head backward and straight down over my leg, causing his front claws to flap crazily in the air as he struggled. With my right hand I seized the whole lower end of his body, between the front side of his groin and on the back where the tail connects to the spine, and I squeezed him like a grape. There was no noise. He was bent and stretched out so far that he couldn't even hiss. But not for long. It was a matter of split seconds before he was up in the air like a fruit bat and then down into a trembling 4-point stance about 10 feet across the room. His eyes were huge and his white fangs were out of his mouth. "What's wrong?" I asked him. "Why are you staring at me like that?" He shuddered and sat heavily down on the floor near the ice box, saying nothing. So we got a little bit of time left for this Hunter S. Thompson episode. We'll end it with an interview by him. I also did a Hunter S. Thompson episode before, so if you're watching on YouTube, you can click on it in the credits if you missed that one. It's him fighting a mountain lion. It's pretty ridiculous. And if you're not on YouTube and you're an audio listener only, please subscribe to us on YouTube. It's Conspiracy Corner Podcast. Profile picture is a bunny rabbit with a samurai sword. If you're on YouTube and you'd rather listen audio only because some people like to save their phone battery, you could find us on Breaker, Google Podcasts, Radio Public, Spotify, and Anchor. But yeah, let's move on with the show. This is an interview with host Alan Davis and Hell's Angel Cliff Skip Workman. The announcer says, "The bike rider is Cliff Workman, the treasurer of the Hells Angels, the wildest bunch of outlaws to come out of the West since Billy the Kid. He's here to challenge his biographer, a tense young literary journalist named Hunter Thompson. It was Thompson who lived, drank, and rode with the Hells Angels, and wrote about them in a bestseller. He was the first to compare them to the outlaws of the West. The critics have been unanimous in their praise of his book, but the Hells Angels haven't heard from yet. Tonight, Sunday, makes author meet critic, bringing together the writer Hunter Thompson with the Hells Angel Cliff Workman." Host Alan Davis says, "What did you think of the book, Skip?" Skip Workman, "Well, I'll tell you, Al, and Hunter, and everybody in this room, that book is 60% cheap trash." Host says, "Cliff, what is a typical Hells Angel?" Skip responds, "Typical Hells Angel could be anybody in this room, somebody that likes to ride a motorcycle. I got a home, I got a job, I got a boat and a trailer. I do all things. I raise dogs. I do a little bit of everything." Hunter S. Thompson says, "Well, let's face it, you're not a typical angel. I know that, and you know that. So let's not get ourselves in that story." The host says, "Do you think the angels sent Cliff here as an emissary, as a minister of planted pedantry, with a high college degree and a yearning for bourgeois respectability? Is he different?" Hunter responds, "Those are all your words." Host says, "But is he different? You said he's not typical." Hunter says, "No, I mean..." Skip says, "You see, actually, there are none of us that care what anybody thinks, because we are us. I am me. What I do in my home is nobody's business. I don't give a damn if they don't like me or me on my motorcycle. It's too bad." Hunter says, "You said you've read the book, and you think that I wasn't saying that." No, I know exactly what I said. I spent 2 years on the dam. Skip interrupts. I'd like to, then get to the end of it, then on why you spend a year with us, why you got your head thumped on. All right, get to it, Hunter says. I want to know why we didn't get the 2 kegs of beer you promised us. This guy here, he's sitting here making $1 million. Oh, help, 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 Hunter responds. Skip says, well, maybe not quite that much. Hunter says, if you knew what I was making on this, you wouldn't sell me that bike on credit. Skip says, well, you're making something on it anyway. We helped you make it, right? Hunter says, yeah. Skip says, there was nothing about money, nothing about a share in the book, nothing about anything. All we wanted was a couple kegs of beer so we could all get drunk, and a copy of the book to each of us, the Oakland members. Yeah, and I said that. Wait a minute, Hunter says. When you get your head thumped on, you wrote a letter to Ralph, and you said, see, and I got my head thumped on. I don't owe you guys nothing. Well, I didn't figure I did, Hunter said. Yeah, but you didn't tell the people why you got your head thumped on. Wait a minute, Hunter says. But which 2 kegs of beer? Which 2 kegs of beer are you talking about? Skip Workman says, the 2 kegs you were going to give us. We've had you in our home. We've fed you. We've given you beer. You didn't pay for nothing. When you went on those runs, donated out of our pocket and all. Hunter says, oh, wait a minute, I don't think you've been in my house. But a lot of angels have been in my house and drank a hell of a lot of beer, of my beer, so I think it's fairly even. Skip says, well, sure, and they still like you. Hunter responds, they do? Skip says, they just don't like what you're doing. The host says, why did they thump him? Skip says, this man here got into a man's personal argument. Hunter says, that's an outright lie. Skip says, no, it isn't. This is my side of what happened. Hunter says, okay, you weren't there. So why don't you preface that? Skip says, this is what happened, and you see if this isn't right. Junkie George was beating his old lady. If you say so, Hunter says. I'm serious, says Skip. This is what happened. Junkie George was beating his old lady. Now listen to this. Junkie George's dog bit him. I didn't say that, Hunter said. Skip says, to me, this is a personal feud. If a guy wants to beat his wife and his dog bites him, that's between the 3 of them, right? But here came the peacemaker, right? He doesn't have a patch on and he isn't in the club, you know. Junkie George is stiff. You walk right up to him and said, only a punk beats his wife and dog. These were your words. Now you said it. You said it to this man, and you backed up. And he said, Hunter, you want some of this? And you said no. But you got it anyways. And when he hits you, 3 or 4 others of them hit you too. More than that, Hunter said. Skip says, you got in your car and you left. That's when in your book, you found Magoo asleep in the back of your car, so you stopped and he got out. But the next day, if you would have had any guts after living with all these people, you'd have come back up there, had a beer, and sat down with everyone and said, all right, I made a mistake. Or, somebody made a mistake. So what? Let's have a drink. But we've never seen you since. We've never seen our 2 kegs of beer, and we've never seen our book. Hunter says, are you finished? Here's the thing. I was talking to Crip. It was about 3 in the morning, and we were talking about whether my BCA 650 would run with his chopper. And we were comparing ratios, top speeds, and roads. And I was watching, what's his name? Junkie George? I don't know. I didn't know the guy. But there was somebody about 30 feet to the left beating his wife to a pulp on the rocks. I thought, well, that's, kind of ugly, but that's the way the game is played in this city. Skip Workman says, if he was beating her that bad, somebody would have stopped her. Oh, no, Hunter says. You're kidding me. And you're going to kid everybody else. Nobody stopped him, and you know that he was beating his wife up. You just said it, right? Skip says, he was beating his wife up, but he didn't have her on her head on the ground with a big rock or something. Oh no, Hunter says. She was lying on the rocks, and he was giving her this motion with his hands. Skip says, no, to keep a woman in line, you've got to beat them like a rug once in a while. Hunter responds, well, I wasn't paying that much attention, because I'd have been around. Skip says, so Junkie George kicked his dog, you know? Hunter says, well, wait a minute, let me just get to it. Skip says, if it would have been me, and I was going to say something about it, I'd say, go ahead and beat your old lady, but don't kick the dog anymore. You said that, Hunter says. Host, I'm sorry, Hunter, we're finished. Hunter says, in other words, I don't get my own version of it. Host says, I'm afraid you'll have to do it privately. All right, Hunter says. Thank you both very much for coming. Thank you all for tuning in. You all have an awesome day. Please like, share, and subscribe.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.